How's it going, everyone? Here we are. Welcome to the next iteration of the DevOps Lounge stream. Thanks for being here. Lovely to see you all. We've got a few viewers here on the Discord, up on YouTube Live now as well. So I'm going to be doing both stream to YouTube Live, obviously recording it as well, so I can do a little bit of editing afterwards. And then, of course, we're going straight to the Discord as well. I think you'll probably get a better experience on the Discord rather than the YouTube Live. So if you are listening on the YouTube Live, I would probably recommend going over to chat.learndevops.com.au. That'll just automatically forward you to the Discord server, and then you'll be able to. I think you'll get a better experience. All right, let's see who we've got here. So Julio, welcome back to stream. Adrian, welcome back. Adrian says he's picked up a few books earlier. Gonna start reading the first 90 days this week. Yeah, it's a good one. It's a really, really good book. It's a good way of structuring your basically how you find the right people to network with, quick wins, adding value straight away, and so on and so forth. It's a good book. I just want to do an audio check. I've obviously done audio checks before I started the stream, but can you hear me okay? You see me okay? Is the audio level okay? It's all fine. Okay. I'm experimenting with the gain on the microphone. What I've done is I've essentially reduced it in Windows down by about 50%. So I've dropped it by about 50%. And then I do post production. I boost it up in post production. So the only problem there is that you get a 50% reduction in volume via the stream. But I think if you just up your own personal volume, I think you'll be absolutely fine. You'll be able to hear me fine, I think. I could hear myself fine when I had my desktop audio at about 50% volume, so you should be good. Should be loud enough. Alrighty. So the first segment then, as usual, is going to be cloud news. Cloud news. Let's have a look at some cloud news. So let's pop on over to the browser, baby. Alright, so we're going to go to AWS, and we're going to be looking at AWS news first. So we're going to be AWS, bit of Azure. We're going to be looking at this weird sort of Google Cloud Platform release notes thing that they have, which is actually pretty strange. Um, I wish they just did what the other people did. And just would make it a lot easier. And then we're going to be looking at some cybersecurity news, and then we're going to look at some hacker news articles as well. And of course, anything that you peeps want to talk about in the streams, just let me know in the questions channel. Anyone on YouTube Live, just pop it in the super chat. More than happy to go over any questions that you might have. And for this just before we start, for this very, very first time, before we start, I'm going to take a sip of coffee from my favorite mug. Keep on dreaming, baby. I don't know where I got this. I think I just got this from a shop nearby. I think it was just I needed a mug, so I went in and just bought like a $2 mug, and that was what was on there. All right, AWS announces the general availability of AWS Cloud Control API. So what is this? Cloud Control API, a set of common application programming interfaces (APIs) that is designed to make it easy for developers to manage their cloud infrastructure in a consistent manner and leverage the latest AWS capabilities faster. Using Cloud Control API, developers can manage the lifecycle of hundreds of AWS resources and over a dozen third-party resources with 5 consistent APIs instead of using distinct service-specific APIs. Okay, that's interesting. So let me have a look here. So Cloud Control API enable developers to create, read, update, delete, CRUD, and list, okay, CRUD-L, AWS and third-party service resources with consistent APIs. Resources include schema, properties, and handler permissions, and handlers that control API interactions with the underlying service. Okay, interesting. So I'm going to let's have a little look at that. I'm going to just dive into that a little bit deeper. Manage AWS and third-party cloud infrastructure. AWS and third-party cloud infrastructure. Basically, so Julia says, basically it's quite useful since no need to call each individual API endpoint. Okay, I think that makes sense. Discover resources and identify resource type schema. So essentially you define what you want to manipulate and then just essentially call one API endpoint, and then your request contains what you want to do. So instead of calling all the endpoints and giving it a request object, you just send the request object telling it what you want to manipulate to one API. Every AWS service right now, we need now we call each endpoint. Yeah, okay. So if you want to create a client SDK, it's quite annoying. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it is. I can, like Botto is a great library, Python library for interacting with the AWS API, but using it is a pain in the backside. Well, using its documentation, which is good, it's just a pain because you've got to go through this massive list of services and find all these individual function calls. Okay, so what they're saying is they've essentially aggregated that down into a single API endpoint. I think that it's going to be a case of, well, HashiCorp and Pulumi are on board, so that says a lot, really, doesn't it? Resource customers on my cloud API remains up to date with the latest with resources. Yeah, okay, so it's going to be a single API endpoint that you essentially, yeah, that is, yeah, it's going to be a single API endpoint that you hit, and I think you're going to define an object that determines what it is that you create or manipulate in some way. And you're right, yeah, the keyword that is interesting here is third party resources. Cloud Control API, a little bit in the way there, sorry. Cloud Control API provides developers with the ability to provision AWS resources with partner infrastructure tools such as HashiCorp, Terraform, and Pulumi. Provides developers with the ability to provision AWS resources with partner infrastructure tools. Okay, so basically what they're saying there is I posted this yesterday. Getting started with cloud, yeah. So I think what they're saying is that the HashiCorp AWS provider is going to be updated to support this. Is basically what it's going to be. All right, that's pretty interesting. That's pretty cool. I think that's definitely something to keep an eye on for sure. That's going to change a lot. I mean, if they go down, it's going to make the AWS provider and Terraform a hell of a lot easier to manipulate. It'll obviously require changes to Botto as well, and many other SDKs. So be interesting to see how this develops over the years. So that's quite an interesting one. So that is an update there from Amazon. Let's close those two. Okay, now programmatically manage alternate contacts on AWS accounts. I actually thought that this was pretty interesting. So for AWS organizations, organization administrators can now centrally manage alternate contacts for member accounts using the management account or a delegated administrator account without requiring credentials for each AWS account. I think that this is quite important because if you're defining your infrastructure as code, I think it's going to be really, really interesting to be able to also set up code so that as people leave organizations, you can have the contact details update in an AWS account. I think that's actually pretty powerful. So I was really, when I saw this title of this update, I thought that's actually pretty goddamn cool. It's going to be one of the biggest things I found going between clients is there's always like contact information or tags or something else that essentially is telling people, here's who you contact if you need help with this, and then you go and look them up in an AD or in SharePoint or even Outlook, and they don't exist anymore. Their accounts have been deactivated. You're like, oh, so it's obviously not, it's completely out of date. So things like this will potentially help alleviate that problem. So I really like that one. I think that that's a pretty cool move by AWS there. Let's have a look at the next one. Okay, so Amazon RDS for PostgreSQL supports new minor versions. So they're now basically improving the amount of versions that you can get access to. RDS on Outpost supports new Postgres minor versions, 13.4, 12.8. So SaaS version of RDS, if you like, which is a weird thing to say, 13.4, 12.8, 11.13, 10.18, and 9.6.23. And on Outpost, which is that sort of in-house, sort of isolated micro AWS cloud that you have on-prem, I think they're about $250,000 per rack, I think, supports the new PostgreSQL minor versions 13.4 and 12.8. So not quite as many updates there, which is interesting. I need to look at Outposts. Do you reckon I should buy one? Just kidding. Can't afford it. If you all want to donate $10,000 each, then maybe we can get an Outpost. It can be here behind me on the camera, and we can like pull cables out of it and kick it and push it over and stuff and see if it still works. Let's have a look. It's very Outpost is very restricted. It is. It's very restricted in a lot of ways in what you can do and also who can buy it. Amazon SES now supports 2048-bit DKIM keys. Customers can now SES customers can now use a 2048-bit domain keys identified mail DKIM keys to enhance their email security. So previously it was, until now, SES only supported 1024-bit. I believe 1024-bit keys are somewhat on borderline crackable, I believe. Brute forceable, I believe. So 2048 is definitely going to help, but we're going to have to keep scaling that upwards, of course, because getting to the point where 2048 will eventually be crackable, and then it will be, you need to go up to, what, a 4092 at that point. 4096. Power of two mathematics. So that's a pretty cool update. What else have we got here? AWS Lambda now supports triggering Lambda functions from an Amazon SQS queue in a different account. So you've already been able to trigger a Lambda based on an SQS queue, receiving an object in said queue, but now you can actually go cross account as well. So that's pretty cool. Now Lambda now allows customers to trigger functions from SQS queues that are of a different AWS account. Previously, customers could trigger Lambda function from SQS queues in the same account only. So that's actually going to be pretty powerful. I've got clients who actually utilize multi accounts extremely heavily. They do all kinds of S3 buckets and multiple accounts. They split out. They use AWS organizations to have buckets in multiple accounts for prod, dev, testing, and they do lots of syncing. And they do things like prod might receive an object and they go, well, we want to do some development work on that. So they'll have a Lambda see the object, it'll get triggered, and then the Lambda will desanitize it. So it'll take it, strip out personally identifiable information, anything sensitive, sanitize the information, and it'll push it to an S3 bucket in another account, which will then trigger possibly another Lambda or some other action that then does development work against that data, or it just sits in the bucket so that when they're developing their code, they can, of course, they've got data available to them, which mimics production pretty closely. So this is going to be quite useful for some of my clients, actually. They won't now need to do crazy things like have a Lambda, SQS trigger a Lambda in this account, which then triggers another Lambda in another account to then talk across. Yeah, that's going to be, that's going to be very, very nice indeed. Alrighty. AWS announces I thought this was cute. AWS Snowcone SSD. AWS Snowcone is now available in solid-state drives with 14 terabyte storage capacity. So obviously, it's basically saying it's the smallest offering in the Snow family. If you don't know what the Snow is, it's basically like you can get like the I forget the name of it now, but they've got these like petabyte size infrastructure, like essentially massive hard drives that they can send out to your premises so that you can do mass data transfer into S3. So you basically send them out. They arrive on your premises. You plug them into your network, they turn up, and you basically give them all your data, and then they very securely send it over to the data center. They plug it into their network, and then they basically push out up to 100 petabytes of information we've got here. AWS Snow Mobile moves up to 100 petabytes of data in a 45-foot long ruggedized shipping container and is ideal for multi-petabyte or exabyte scale digital media migrations and data center shutdowns. So then they do Snowball, which is more of a physical device, like a thing you can carry around. It looks like a PC essentially, and that's pretty chunky as well. So it's 80 terabytes user block, and then again same thing. Oh, actually, there's pictures. Sorry, you basically plug this in. This is an e-ink screen here that's got QR codes on it that you scan and so on and so forth, and you send that in. And then they've got the Snowcone now, which is basically this little tiny portable hard drive up to 14 terabytes. That's actually pretty cool. So it weighs 2.1 kilograms, so you can carry one in a backpack or fit it in tight spaces for IoT, vehicle, or even drone use cases. That's really cool. Huh. Very nice. Very, very nice indeed. Let's have a look. So, like Snowcone, SSD is also a portable and rugged device built with the security of your data in mind. It is compact enough to fit in a backpack and designed to withstand harsh environments. So, it's got two vCPUs, 4 gig of RAM, and 14 terabytes of usable SSD storage and wired networking. Good old edge compute workloads. That's pretty cool. I really like that. I think I'd be tempted. I don't think 14 terabytes of storage. I couldn't really. It'd be fun to order one just to test it and just see it going through. That would be really cool. But I don't think we can. I don't think I have that much data. I guess I could just randomly generate 10 terabytes of data, couldn't I, on the NAS, and then just order one and just put a load of crap up in S3 and then delete it again. Yeah. Alrighty then. Let's move on to Azure object replication in public preview for premium block blob storage. It's a mouthful. Object replication now supports premium block blobs to replicate your data from blob container in one storage account to another anywhere in Azure. Object replication unblocks a new set of common replication scenarios for premium block blobs. Minimize latency, have your users consume the data locally rather than issuing cross-region read requests. Increase efficiency, have your compute clusters process the same set of objects locally in different regions. Optimize data distribution. Have your data consolidated in a single location for processing/analytics, and then distribute only resulting dashboards to your offices worldwide. Very cool. Very cool. Let's see what we got in the chat. We got Phil. Phil, I did get my microphone. I got the clip that was missing. That was preventing me from doing it. There was a clip on the boom arm that snapped, so I couldn't attach it to the boom arm. So it made it very difficult to operate. And then it required a lot of playing around with the settings as well in order to get the audio right. But yeah, it is nicer having it now. It's really nice having it back again. It's much more comfortable. Yeah, that's right, Julius. There is indeed Snow Mobile. Luxy Life, welcome to the stream. Abhay, welcome to the stream. Adrian has said hey and then gone quiet. You must be busy doing lots of work, like I should probably be doing. Oh, I am working. Here I am. I'm on the stream. I'm working. Woohoo! All right. General availability: Azure Data Factory Managed Virtual Network. So Azure Data Factory Managed Virtual Network is now generally available. With Managed Virtual Network, you can provision the Azure Integration Runtime as part of a managed virtual network and leverage private endpoints to securely connect to supported data stores. Very cool. I don't use Azure that much. Very, very rarely. What I do use tends to be identity services. It tends to be like Key Vault and stuff like that. That's pretty much all I use. I don't ever do any compute workloads in it. It is becoming more popular here in Brisbane, in Australia in general, especially with government clients, but I don't really actually interact with it all that much. My current client is looking at Azure, not in any way to actually move over to move away from AWS, but just sort of there's this concept, this multi-cloud concept, which everyone just seems to be in love with. But pretty much most of my clients all do AWS, and most organizations in Brisbane do AWS. It's sort of like you can't go wrong for hiring IBM. It's sort of that kind of model now. You can't really go wrong for hiring AWS, except with the IBM, you actually can go wrong with hiring IBM. Very, very wrong. Okay, Azure Automation Hybrid Worker extension for Azure and Arc-enabled servers is now in public preview. So what does this do? Let's have a look. Azure Automation is releasing a native integration of user hybrid runbook worker based on VM extension for Windows and Linux. Okay, don't know what any of this is. Let's have a look. Seamless onboarding of Azure and non-Azure Arc machines as hybrid user hybrid worker, removing the dependency on log analytics agent for onboarding user hybrid workers, which is a multi-step process, time-consuming and error-prone. It's now got ease of manageability, Azure AD authentication. What are the benefits? Enables organizations to meet the stringent audit and compliance requirements by not using local authentication methods. Seamless integration of Azure Automation with Azure Active Directory for organizations requiring centralized control and management of the identities and credentials. Excellent. I noticed that, so Julia says, I noticed that the updates for AWS a lot of time are interesting but weird services where Azure updates are mostly enterprise focused features and GCP is GCP. I think AWS gets its updates spot on. I think the blog on there is really good, and I think that Microsoft and Google could learn a lot from it. Azure, if you don't go to the very right point on the web page, you end up with essentially just a bunch of articles that just explain how to do things and trying to get you to be like, wow, how cool is that? And that's pretty cool. And some of the stuff is good, but getting to this actual updates on actual Azure platform itself does actually, as you say, yeah, it does yield just really weird sort of enterprisey updates. And then yeah, we're going to look at GCP very very shortly. That's even weirder again. Let's have a look. AZ module support for Azure automation is now available. So AZ module. So AZ is the command line tool, I believe. So in February, Microsoft announced Azure RM PowerShell module retirements. This will be replaced with PowerShell modules named AZ, which provides all the capabilities of Azure RM modules with more improvements. Okay, let's have a look. There's an option, blah, blah, blah. It makes it easy for work with Azure modules. Azure Automation now supports AZ modules. Let's have a look at this Azure Automation. I'm gonna think that this is that DSC thing. Starts with free credits. Simplify cloud management with process automation. Save time, lower control hybrid environments, integrate management systems using serverless runbooks, ensure consistent management of Windows and Linux. Let's have a look here. Let's have a look. Microsoft invests more than 1 billion annually on cybersecurity research and development. We employ more than 3,500 security experts dedicated to data security and privacy. Why trust automation? No upfront costs, no termination fees. Pay only for what you need. Okay. Still, still a little unsure as to what it is. Error-prone cloud management. Azure Automation helps you focus on work that adds business value by reducing errors and boosting efficiency. So again, is it something that you use to? Does it? Is it something you use to actually build stuff with? Update Windows and Linux systems across so it's basically it's automating the actual cloud environment and the product as well as actually the operating systems itself. Configuration management in the cloud. So that obviously explains it. Author and manage PowerShell configurations, import configuration scripts, generate no configurations all in the cloud. Azure configuration management to monitor and automatically update machine configuration across physical and virtual machines, Windows or Linux, in the cloud or on premises. So it's sort of that's where the hybrid comes in, obviously. I think it's basically a very highly stateful configuration management system. Is basically what it is by the looks of it. So that's pretty cool. I've got no problems with that whatsoever. Let's have a look what you just said here. I just realized, technically speaking, Azure itself have conflict of interest for a lot of its features. Does it really? What do you mean? Phil says, I think it's an OpsWorks equivalent. I think so, Phil. Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're right. What's the next one? Second to last one for Azure. Don't worry, the pain will be over shortly. Azure Purview is now generally available. Microsoft is announcing that Azure Purview is generally available as of September 28th. So it's available now. Oh my God. You can now maximize the value of your on-premises, multi-cloud, and software as a service data with this unified data governance solution. Easily create a unified map of your data assets and their relationships with automated data discovery and sensitive data classification. Get insights into location and movement of data across your hybrid landscape, and empower data consumers to find valuable data through a data catalog. Okay, so it's for BI stuff. Yeah, okay. So it's basically sort of like a complete overlook and a overview of all of your information and where it is and how it can be consumed and classifications of it. And you can kind of go, I want that data. And it goes and speaks to 4 different data endpoints and goes, okay, here it is. All right, cool. Very good. Very good. Norway East availability zone now generally available. Availability zones in Norway East are made up of 3 unique physically separated locations or zones within a single region to bring higher availability and asynchronous replication across Azure regions for disaster recovery protection. Excellent. So Norway East now has some availability zones. Very cool. One thing I will say about Azure is they seem to invest more in single countries. So in Australia, you've got AWS and you've got AWS Sydney. We're getting AWS in Melbourne, but it isn't here yet. Whereas Azure, there's 3 available. There's actually 3 sub-regions within Australia. You've got Brisbane, you've got Canberra, and you've got Sydney, I believe. Availability zones. Let me double check that. Azure availability zones. I know that there's one in. I know there's at least one in Canberra. Let's see if we can get some information. Yeah, I know what they are. What isn't? Where in the world are? Okay. All right, let's have a look. Australia, mate. Yeah, so it's got one in Victoria, New South Wales, and Canberra. So it doesn't have one in Brisbane, sorry. So they've got three already. So Canberra is the capital of Australia. It's a territory, it's not a state. And then they've got New South Wales, which is a state, and Victoria, which is a state. So that's pretty cool. So they've actually got three, whereas AWS has a one, essentially. And then I would say that each one of these then has availability zones inside of it. So available with three zones. Nearest region first available Australia East. Nearest region with zones available Australia East. That's pretty cool. This one's very much used for government stuff because Canberra being the capital, where all the federal government is, etc. So that makes perfect sense. All right, cool. That's Azure. Now let's look at the weirdness that is Google Cloud release notes. This page documents production updates to Google Cloud. You can periodically check this page for announcements about new or updated features, bug fixes, unknown issues, and deprecated functionality. Which, with the way Google behave, that is pretty much everything. They just deprecate everything when they get bored of it. Okay, so it's just a change log, I guess. Network Connectivity Center. Okay, let's have a look and see if there's a new feature, add filter, product, type. This feature, yeah, feature, I guess. Okay, let's have a look. Anthos clusters feature, a cluster lifecycle improvement. What's this for? And oh, okay, Anthos clusters on VMware. Users user clusters can never. Okay, sorry, that sentence confused me as a reader. Okay, cloud load balancing, external HTTPS load balancing is now available in regional mode. The new regional external HTTPS load balancer contains many of the features of our existing global load balancer, but with an ever-growing list of advanced traffic management capabilities. You can use this load balancer for workloads with jurisdictional compliance requirements or to access the standard network tier. I don't know much about their current. So load balancer features external, global, regional. So look like GCP need what AWS, which is highlights. Yeah, they really do. I mean, I'm glad I'm glad I filtered on feature. That actually makes it much easier. I don't really. Oh, I guess I do care about deprecation, change, breaking, change, feature, fix, issue. I guess deprecation is an important one. See if there's anything deprecated. Oh, it doesn't like that at all. So that's no. I guess we're not doing that. So let's have a look. Was that at the or? Oh, right. Okay. Oh, good. All right. So feature. Okay, feature. So I guess with a global load balancer, then I guess they're saying that they have a global load balancer which can just distribute globally, and then you just hit it, and then it just works out where to go. And now they're saying they've regionalized those load balancers, which sounds really really good. Let's have a look. Feature Data Cloud Fusion. This Anthos cluster on VMware that almost pretty much the same as above. You can now use SAP as a source for batch-based and Delta-based data extraction in Cloud Data Fusion through operational data provisioning. Lots of big words there. So VPC service control sharing availability for the following integration: security token service. BigQuery table functions are now generally available. With GA release, authorized table functions are now supported. More Anthos stuff. Cloud SQL for Postgres. Cloud SQL supports the preview version of two recommenders that help you optimize your data costs. Idle database instance recommender identifies idle database instances. Okay. And provides recommendations about the savings that you can make by shutting them down. That's interesting. Over-provisioned database instance reminder identifies over-provisioned database instances in your project, provides recommendations about savings you can make by right-sizing these instances. That's pretty good. Do you think, let me know in the chat here, do you think that the cloud providers do enough to help you reduce your bill? Or do you think that they do what they can to trap you into spending more? I find that AWS is actually pretty good at this. Like they have the rights, the well architected stuff. And whenever I've actually interacted with a AWS account manager, in most cases they've actually been pretty good at going, did you know if you did this, you can actually reduce your spend? So I found they've been pretty good, but at the same time, I reckon they can do a lot more. I reckon they can do a lot more. Julia reckons that all cloud want users to overspend, and then there are specific services like DigitalOcean, yeah, like fixed cost. that have fixed, yeah, like light sale as well. AWS light sales like fixed cost, whereas with cloud, it's sort of like your guess is as good as ours as to what your bill is going to be. It's like, who knows? Hmm. I mean, things like this, these recommenders are basically saying, hey, you could actually reduce your costs here by lowering down how many instances you've got going is pretty cool. I think that that's a good step forward. But I don't. I think they could do more. Personally, I think they could do more. The common thing is that will never happen. What do you mean by that? Do you mean like, well, that you'll never get a big bill, or you'll never? Oh, you mean like it'll never go viral and that kind of thing? Cloud SQL. So a lot of Cloud SQL stuff. Okay, you can now use producer portals, new guided configuration options to create deployment packages for your VM products directly in the Cloud console. Very cool. More cloud stuff. Cloud Run customer managed encryption keys are now at general availability. All right, cool. That's enough Google, I think. We've gone through enough Google there. Let's have a look. It won't cost that much. Well, yeah. And then they get smacked. All right, let's have a look at the Daily Swig, which is going to be our source for cybersecurity news and views. I actually really like this website. It's really, really nice. It just organizes everything in a really quite exceptional way. Is it free? Port Swigger. Whoa, okay. I don't like these infinity sort of loading ones because you can never get to the bottom to then look at the about stuff. It's sort of, I guess there's an about button there, but I guess if that's what's in the only thing that's in there. But brought to you by Portswigger Web Security. We cover the latest side, so it's obviously it's backed by a commercial entity. Okay, that makes sense. So who we got here? Anna Bannister. I'm just looking for any names that I know. I recognize a few of them, but not many. Cool. This is an awesome website. I think it's great. There was two that jumped out at me. So we head on over to the front page. Nope, that's the actual product right there. So we head on to the Daily Swig front page, I should say. We just sort of get an overview of everything, I think. Yeah, we sort of get an overview of everything, and I think I think it's well presented and there's some great articles. So prototype pollution vulnerabilities rife among high traffic websites, study finds. This one was good. Enterprise Security Report. Malicious hackers are exploiting known flaws because organizations aren't quick enough to patch. I think I brought this up actually, yeah. I think it's pretty safe to say that most organizations are pretty crap when it comes to patching. Most don't actually patch quick enough, or sometimes even at all for a long, some don't have them for a long time. Let's have a look at this. I'll have a look at that. Yeah, I might not be able to do it on the stream because I've only got about 30 minutes left and I've got a few other things I want to get through. So organizations are urged to be more proactive when it comes to protecting against vulnerabilities after a report found that malicious attackers routinely exploit unpatched systems. I wonder if that's probably one of the biggest ways of getting in. Released this week found that a huge number of companies are falling foul to cyber attacks despite having already despite having already access to suitable fixes. Brain fart. This is happening because malicious actors are using Shodan to scan for networks that are exposed to known vulnerabilities and exploit them before the victim can apply the patch. That actually surprises me, but I guess it does actually make sense. Um, Trustworthy Spider Lab researchers reported that there was a record-breaking number, 18,500, of new security vulnerabilities in the year 2020, a 6% increase on 2019, and a staggering 184.6% increase from 2016. Why 2016? 5 years, I guess. And while some of these flaws were deemed to be high security, more than 50% of the servers were vulnerable to exploitation weeks and even months update after a security update was released. So let's have a look. So high profile targets. The report assessed a number of high profile vulnerabilities that appeared in 2021, including the Apache Tomcat HTTP request smuggling vulnerability, multiple vulnerabilities in VMware vCenter, multiple vulnerabilities in Microsoft Exchange. The team used Shogun to determine how many networks were still left open to these security issues despite patches being widely available. I thought when I clicked on that there, that was going to take me to Shodan and do the search for me. Wasn't going to click that, guarantee you. I'm not clicking that on stream. The results were varied. While just 5.9% of networks were still vulnerable to proxy logon, 49% were open to exploit by the issues in VMware vCenter, and a staggering 54% were vulnerable to the Apache Tomcat HTTP request smuggling bug. That's pretty, yeah, wow. You see, this is why I think, I mean, look, patching is actually a hard problem to solve, especially when you have high traffic systems and you have a need for essentially zero downtime. It is difficult to get right. You can't just push a button and update all these systems. However, that being said, this is why I like to use Packer and I put it in a CI pipeline and have it constantly producing a nightly AMI. And you just basically have like a block of like two or three of them. You just delete the old, create the new one, delete the oldest, create the new one, delete the oldest. So, you don't end up with thousands of AMIs because you have to pay for the storage of them. So I find that if you're doing that, you're producing a nightly AMI, and then you can find a way of cycling your instances in a sort of like, you take an instance out of a pool, you cycle it, you update it, you check it works, you put it back in the pool, and then you take out another one, and you keep doing that. I think that that's a good way of ensuring that you're getting a constant stream of patched systems. It's not possible for everyone to do. Something that you can do as well as you can sort of A/B it as well. You can just have a load balancer with if you in would you EKS cluster behind it, and then you can build another EKS. Well, actually, with Kubernetes, it's much easier. You can just bring up nodes, and then you can just retire nodes, and the pods get moved. It's actually even easier if you're going to be using EKS with EKS CTL and just Kubernetes in general. But for people in a more traditional setup, you could have a couple of load balancers. You spin up a load balancer, you spin up new instances, put the application on it, using all the brand new AMI, all the new versions of everything. And obviously you do tests on it, and then of course you then let it go wild. And if you can automate those tests, then even better, because you can just sort of have that execute during downtime or quiet times automatically live, and you just flick in the traffic between two load balancers, click click click, just like a clock. You're just ticking it across. Julia says, I do something similar but with Nix. So you use Nix to essentially across the board just update all the software across. But how would you handle downtime? All right. What was the other one I found that I thought was quite interesting? What does the future hold for browser security? Check out the latest features destined for mobile and desktop. A rundown of leading web browsers' privacy and security features both in place and in the pipeline. Excellent. So we'll skip this topic. However, not all web browsers created equal. And we'll go straight to the stats here. It's found interesting stat counter. Google Chrome remains the most popular browser with an estimated two-thirds global market share at 65%, followed by Apple Safari 18%, Microsoft Edge, Firefox, Samsung Internet, and Opera. Other browsers have collectively snagged 6% of the overall market share. Let's have a look. While familiarity with a particular brand may influence our choice of browser, this doesn't necessarily mean that the most popular varieties offer the best security today. I thought that Chrome would be up there in regards to security. Let's have a look at Google Chrome. When it comes to Chromium-based browsers, developers aim to stick to four core principles: speed, security, stability, and simplicity. As the overwhelming market leader, Google Chrome bears a heavy responsibility in protecting its user base. Over the past year, the tech giant has made a number of improvements, including implementing stricter privacy rules for extensions. Has it? Let's see what it's done. Warning users when their credentials have been compromised and found online, and the launch of enhanced safe browsing to mitigate phishing attacks. Let's have a look at what these two features do. So Chrome extension, more private and secure. So is this like a sandboxing thing, I'm going to guess? They've done like a, yes, okay, thank you. They've done like a sandboxing thing. Let's have a look at like from stricter privacy rule 20 will change how extensions access data and how permissions work when an extension is installed. You'll get to determine which websites the extension can access, and when you browse the web instead of letting the extension decide. Okay. Once you grant extension permission to access the website's data, that preference can be saved for that domain, but no longer the default. Okay. After extension, click, click, click. Yeah. Interesting. Permission, transparent extensions, data usage. Okay. Also improving our developers' policies to make extensions more transparent. Every extension will publicly display its privacy practices, which will Use clear visuals and simple language to explain the data they collect and use. That's good. That's excellent. More security updates to keep you safe. All right, cool. I think that's good. What was the other one? This is a oh yeah, okay. Let's get this nice and big so you guys can read it. I'll pop it out one. There we go. We launched enhanced safe browsing, which turn on your Chrome security section. Global security increase. These improvements are built on top of existing security mechanisms that already protect billions of devices. Since the initial launch, we continuously worked behind the scenes to improve real-time URL checks and apply machine learning models to warn on previously unknown attacks. As a result of browsing, you successfully fished 35% less than other users. Interesting. Starting with Chrome 91, we will roll out new features to help enhanced safe browsing users better choose their extensions. Okay. The proceed with caution, not trusted. Add weather. Okay, interesting. Safe browsing, improved download protection. Riskier files.exe. Yeah, that makes sense. Oh wow, you can actually send it. It's dangerous and Chrome has blocked it. So you can actually send files off to be scanned. When you download a file, Chrome first performs a first level check with Google Safe Browsing using metadata about the downloaded file, such as digest and stuff like that. That's pretty cool. If you choose to send a file, Chrome will upload it to Google Safe Browsing, which will scan it using a static and dynamic analysis classifiers in real time. After a short wait, if Safe Browsing determines the file is unsafe, Chrome will display a warning. That's pretty nice. I like that. Julius, dropping off. See you, mate. Sleep well. Have a good one. Thanks for showing us the stream today. Excellent. So Google Chrome, it looks like it's winning there. Site isolation for Android, image-based phishing classification systems, and Chrome actions for completing tasks such as deleting passwords and performing safety checks. Awesome. An upcoming feature slated for 94, meanwhile, is HTTPS first mode, which will attempt to upgrade connections from HTTP to HTTPS. I thought it did that anyway, and warn users before loading sites that don't support the upgrade. I knew that was, yeah, actually, I remember, I think Firefox said that they were just basically going to completely and utterly deprecate HTTP in the sense that it just won't load HTTP websites without you having to go in and turn that on. So by default, it would stop, but I'm not sure. Maybe this article will cover that. Safari browser only works within Apple's ecosystem, and iOS and macOS are considered relatively secure. There are features that block cookies and cross-site tracking, enable or disable JavaScript, and implement Google's safe browsing to warn users when they are likely visiting a malicious or fraudulent website. Apple has also implemented a new anti-tracking feature that requires user consent before third-party advertisers can make use of Apple's identifier for advertiser IDFA. According to Verizon Media's Flurry Analytics, over 80% of iOS users have so far denied tracking requests. Excellent. Microsoft Edge Internet Explorer. Microsoft Edge release 2020 includes a number of interesting security controls, including kids mode for minors, dedicated tracking prevention module, private browsing, password monitor and generator, and Microsoft Defender smart screen, and optional scanner for malware and phishing-based web threats. The Redmond Giant is testing new features and improvements both Microsoft Edge developer and Canary builds. Let's have a look. Despite new Edge Chromium-based, there's still some Windows users and enterprise users choose to rely on 1995 Internet Explorer while browsing. That is gross. Microsoft is trying to encourage a shift to its more modern and secure successor, especially given the browser includes an Internet Explorer mode, which is compatible with many legacy websites and applications. That's a very smart move. Microsoft puts customers in control of their privacy and security, blah, blah, blah. Okay, excellent. Yeah, there it is there for at the bottom there for Firefox. Is HTTPS first by default in private browsing mode. Okay, that's only going to be in private browsing mode. The browser's development team has improved software by implementing DNS over HTTPS for some demographics as a default, which leans upon the trusted recursive resolver project. That's very, very cool. Okay, company getting ready to roll out Fission, a new site isolation feature for sandboxing web pages and frames. I think that that's quite interesting. This is what I was wondering what most people, most organizations would actually be doing, most browsers would be doing. Mozilla's implementation of site isolation in Firefox. Site isolation is a security feature that offers additional protection in case of large classes of security bugs. Protection in case of large classes of security bugs. Site isolation safely sandboxes web pages and web frames, isolating them from each other, further strengthening Firefox security. That makes perfect sense. It's in sort of a virtual machine. It can't. It can only manipulate its own DOM. It can't look at your DOM. Can't look at your cookies. It can't look at a local storage and so on and so forth. It'll have its own version of those things. So that isolation is very similar to a virtual machine at the operating system level, or even a Docker container at the operating system level. So that is excellent. That's definitely going to help. Samsung, look, I don't really care. And Opera, I'm sure it's good. Tor browser. Let's have a look. The Tor browser, I imagine, gets attacked a lot. Brave is a new one. This is actually risen in popularity quite a lot. Chromium-based Brave browser blocks trackers by default. Compatible across multiple platforms, the browser now accounts for 36.2 million monthly active users and 12.5 million daily active users. Brave strips ads and ad trackers while also curating new content from different sources. That's pretty cool. Consenting users can support content creators by opting into the Brave ad scheme, in which marketers can push ads and users earn Brave tokens in return. That's an interesting way of approaching it. DuckDuckGo. Okay. They have a browser? Oh, they got it. Oh, yeah, to serve as a. Oh, okay, okay. Definitely is set to be released to serve as a web browser. Wow, okay. Very interesting. All right, well, I think that's a good amount of security there. Let's have a look at some data breaches, actually. There was one. There was a couple of new ones. US retailer notified 4.6 million data breach. Don't think that one's new. The Africa one we covered already. RC vulnerabilities in cachette could put users at risk. Oh no, this is new. Yeah, 1st of October. Use Neiman Marcus notifies, I don't know who that is. 4.6 million customers of data breach. Okay. It's a retail giant. Okay, alerting, blah, blah, blah. The company, which runs 37 luxury department stores in 17 states, said an unauthorized party obtained information associated with customers' online accounts in May 2020. It said it discovered the incident in September, 17 months later. Oh my God. Wow. Okay. That is a really successful hack. That is really successful. If they really actually only discovered it 17 months later or hoping it would sort of go away, that's a really, really successful hack. Wow. Okay, that's enough security. What I like to do is peruse through Hacker News as well. It's one of my favorite sources, so I look at Reddit as well. But I usually use Reddit to find and help people with DevOps questions and Terraform questions and Ansible, AWS, and so on and so forth. So with Hacker News, I use this to sort of get my intake of new tools and things like that. So I've gone through and I've highlighted a few that I think are pretty cool. The first one that popped up is nothing really to do with DevOps at all, security or anything like that, but it's actually, I've played around with this Pico 8. If you're interested in just playing around with a little bit of game dev, this is such a cute little engine. Everything is built in, as you can see down here. If you can see if I zoom in, everything's built in. You can only use what the engine gives you, which is this little art system. It gives you this little level designer. It's got the sound effects built in, and so on and so forth. And then you can then program it to be like, when X played, do this, when that played, do that, and so on and so forth. There's your code editor. It's limited in file size, how many lines. You can only get so many files. You can only have so many graphics and so many sprites and so many sounds. It's a really, really cool little way just to play around with gaming. I've been using it on and off for a year or so now, and it's really, really cool. Another great article in here. All of these links, by the way, I'm going to post into the Discord channel, into the question channel, so you can see them all. So this is a general introduction to GPU's inner workings. So if you're really interested in understanding the internal workings of a GPU, which I am, not for any particular reason, I just think it's really cool. This is actually a pretty cool way of showing you how it works. Gets a bit techy and a bit dirty, if you like, but it's a pretty cool way of looking at it. So, is hacking the next struggle for agriculture? I thought that this was a really interesting article. Recently, a relatively small Iowa cooperative was hacked. If the alarms over cybersecurity in agriculture weren't going off before, they certainly should be now. It doesn't seem like much. Oh, farmers getting hacked. Got to remember, the farmers provide us with our food. And it sounds like really obvious, but if they're getting hacked and then their infrastructure is getting shut down, food supplies start getting affected. So this is actually quite a big one. This looks good, RSS Reader. So the bad news is that it's shut down, which is a shame. I used it a few times. I actually ended up going to Fresh RSS which I then retired. I used that myself to pull in all my RSS feeds. But I found that I just found it easier to just go to the website, so I ended up just sort of moving away from it. But this is closing down, and it's a bit of a shame. What's the other one? So Google is developing its own CPUs for Chromebook laptops. So this is very similar to what Apple are doing with regards to their M chips and their A chips and things. So Google looks like are looking at bringing it in-house and doing the same thing. And it says something interesting here. It says US software giants ramps up hiring blitz for semiconductor and hardware ambitions. And then it goes on to say competitiveness. These tech giants believe that having their own chipsets, their own instruction sets, is going to be development to as key to their competitiveness. I think it's going to create tighter, closed ecosystems that are going to be harder for people to develop for, because you're going to need more abstraction layers now. So if I want to write hardware for, if I want to write software for Google, and they've got all their Google hardware and they've got all their own chips, it's a different architecture. So you're going to have to use some kind of abstraction. If we want to do it for Mac, you've got the M1. I'm going to have to either use some sort of abstraction. So we're going to have to hope that all of these tools, all these languages, all these compilers, linkers, etc., are capable of handling all of these now unique CPU architectures that all of these providers are coming out with, which was the point of x86, is that that's why Intel and AMD, that's why you can take an Intel chip and an AMD chip, you can change your main board and your Intel chip in your system, and Windows will still run on it because they use the x86. They still have a somewhat different architect. They've still got some instruction sets that are unique, but the x86 standard is a set of essentially guaranteed instructions across both architectures. This is going to take that away, in my opinion, unless, of course, they all agree on a standard. So, quite interesting that they're going to be doing this. Possibly not a good thing. And I'll end up on a tool, but before we do that, I'm going to look at this article, which I actually found this to be quite funny. So apparently this guy was experiencing heat problems, CPU high usage problems with the kernel task in macOS. So 494% CPU usage, and obviously things were getting hot. And the solution seems to be, if your MacBook Pro runs hot or shows high CPU for the kernel task, try charging on the right and not on the left. Okay, so basically, you take the cable out, boom, on the left, and you plug it in the right, and that seems to resolve that. I thought that was pretty funny, but also pretty interesting as well. There you go. And then finally, I wanted to brush up. I wanted to just look at this Golem tool, but I am actually running out of time, unfortunately. So for the last 10 minutes, I like to go to Q&A. We don't have many viewers, but that's okay. If you do want to ask questions, feel free to do it now. Otherwise, I'm going to disappear for the day. But other than that, this is quite interesting. It is essentially a Git-based wiki system. You run it. We head on over to, let's have also screenshots actually. You run it, and then it finds files and it parses them, and then it shows you them like this, and sort of like a wiki-based system. And then you can go in and make changes and things like that. So for anyone who wants to run a local wiki based purely on a Git repository and its contents, there it is. It's called Golem. And again, I'm going to put all of this into the chat, into the questions channel on the Discord. Let's have a look. So we've got a question here. So that's it for all the articles and news. I hope that was helpful and insightful. Adrian asks, can you share the progression you went through when quoting the time it takes to complete projects? Also, how would you respond when you aren't sure how long it would take? Okay, good question. So let's address the first question. So obviously it's two. Can you share the progression you went through when quoting the time it takes to complete projects? So it's essentially about understanding the problem that's trying to be solved, and then looking at all of the inputs and outputs for that problem. So how much data are you dealing with? What kind of users are you dealing with? Sort of volume of things. So once you understand that kind of information, you can start breaking it down into, well, what kind of inputs do we need to take in? What kind of data do we need to store? What kind of data do we need to transform? What happens to those transformations? Would they go? Are they sent onto another system? What is the architecture? How big is this thing going to be? How big is the project going to be? So if it's like, oh, we need an internal tool to run, to manage, let's just say Terraform doesn't exist, and they say, oh, we want an internal tool to manage our EBS volumes for us. Well, I've just used Terraform and I've just spin up AWS backups. But if we assume those two things don't exist, the solution there would be, okay, well, the data coming in will be EBS volumes across our AWS account, and the data going out will be snapshots. Okay, so what kind of scale are we talking about here? Well, we have 500 EC2 instances running. Some of them have multiple EBS volumes. Okay, cool. How often do you want snapshots? What kind of flexibility do you need in that solution? Are we writing it in Python? Are we writing it in Java? Are we writing it in JavaScript? Or are we writing it in Go? How's it going to operate? So we might decide on doing a CloudWatch alarm that triggers a Lambda function on a schedule. The Lambda function runs, and then maybe it goes through and it looks for particular tags on instances, and then it works its way through, snapshot whatever needs to be snapshotted, delete any old snapshots, and so on and so forth. Does some sort of calculations on what should and should not be deleted. So what you would do there then is you would have to then break that down into lots of little tasks. Well, we need to understand AWS CloudWatch alarms, and if there are any on the scheduling side of things, are there any limitations? Can they schedule every second, every minute, every hour, every day? What's the smallest unit of scheduling that we can do? When it triggers the Lambda, what can we do with that trigger? Can we pass in data? Can we pass in information? Can we put information in the alarm to say, we want you to trigger, and here's the information and the tags we want you to look at? If not, then if it can't do that, then where do we get the tags from? Do we hard code them into the Lambda function? Now, the Lambda function. Well, we know Lambda functions operate on a 15-minute limit. Is that going to be enough? We need to do a spike this. We need to park this. We've got 500 instances, and let's argue that on average we've got about 750 EBS volumes across those 500 instances. How long does it take to do the snapshot? Do we take the snapshot and then do we sit around and we wait for the snapshot to complete? Or do we just hope that AWS gets it right? So you've then got to start looking at all these little chunks and start asking questions and going, what don't we know and what do we know? And if you know everything, then you can pretty much start developing the solution, and you can then try and estimate, well, we've got to write all this Python code, we've got to write this, we've got to set up these CloudWatch alarms, that this will take that amount of time, we need this many alarms, we've got to write this much code to do this, we've got to go out and find libraries and do research and stuff. So the first part of anything of estimation is understanding what you don't understand, and trying to understand what you don't, trying to understand all of the inputs, all of the outputs, all of the components, all of the pieces, looking at breaking it down and looking at everything, and then time, sort of estimating every single thing, and then that gives you the whole project sort of timescale. Your second question is also, how would you respond when you aren't sure how long it would take? Well, to be perfectly honest with you, I sort of respond with I don't know all the time, because there's just so many gotchas. Like, I can go into a client and think like, how would you do this Lambda snapshot thing? I'd explain the architecture to them, and they'd go, how long would that take? And I'd say, well, I've never done it before. Let's assume that you've never done it before. Actually, obviously, it would change if you've already done it in the past, because you could use that as a sort of reference point. But if you haven't done it before and it's something completely new, then the answer would sort of be, I don't really know, because I need to know more about your internal processes. So I've gone into clients where turning on AWS backup has been a 1 to 2 month long process. So how long would it take me to write the Python function and test it and get something working? Probably about 5 days, probably about a week to have something well documented, tested, working, showcased, and so on and so forth. But when it comes to actually implementing it, that's a different thing again. So it depends very heavily on the culture we're in as well in the organization. So it's all well and good if it takes you 5 days to set up the Lambda function. But if it's a large enterprise and they don't allow Lambda functions because they're just a classic EC2, they've lifted and shifted into the cloud, and 17 people have to be involved to turn on Lambda, then the estimation is the week to build the Lambda plus a month to go through the service enablement process. So most of the time, it's sort of like, you tell me. I'm coming into your organization with a lot of unknowns, and I need you to tell me how long you think it will take, as well as how long I can tell you. Sorry, how long I think it will take for me to do my technical component, building the small little technical cogs that I'm going to build. But you tell me what the administrative processes look like based on your experience. So it's very it's not an ambiguous question, but there's just so much going on in organizations that it can be really hard to actually come up with an accurate estimation. So it depends on which part of the project you're talking about, whether it's the entire thing, whether it's something you've done before. What does the culture look like? If you're in a startup, you just turn on AWS Lambda. In fact, it's probably not even turned off, to be perfectly honest with you. So you can just start spinning up Lambda straight away. So you probably have the solution done in probably 2 weeks in a working sort of production way that you're happy with, that you can monitor. that you can assess, that you get reports on, so on and so forth. So it's so varied that it's just a case of breaking it down, break down the problem into its little components, and then ask lots and lots of questions. That's my opinion on this sort of thing, is just ask lots of questions. Plan lots, design lots, ask lots of questions, understand as much as you can, get as much information you can. That's why data is so powerful in the industry right now. That's why data is so valuable. It's why data scientists earn so much money and so on and so forth, because this kind of stuff is actually getting deeper metrics and an understanding on problems enables organizations to make more informed decisions. And so, you as an engineer in a team being asked to do something and being asked to estimate something, your first thing should be, I need to discover as much as I can about the problem domain, the stakeholders, the expectations around the end result, who's going to be using it, who's not going to be using it, what's going to be needed, the culture, the service enablement processes, cybersecurity processes, acceptance criteria, and so on and so forth. You basically need to collect as much information as you can. Easy. I hope that answers the question. I can see that Adrian's still typing, so I'll give him a second. Straight from coffee to water. Another massive question from Adrian. I do unfortunately have to go very shortly because I am due at a barbecue. Where do you typically fall on the scale of minimal viable product to best practices when delivering the project? I ask because I've noticed all the higher level engineers I've worked with typically fall on the MVP side of the scale. A friend and I were recently talking through a problem he needed to solve for work. We discussed it over 2 days and had a good plan. However, a senior engineer ended up resolving it in one day with something that was very credible work. Yeah, okay, I understand what you're saying. So you're basically saying, hey, I need you to do this. We need you to do this. Do you sit down and plan it and work it out and then produce something solid with a bit more sort of like metrics and guidance around, a bit more secure, user validation, input sanitization, and all this kind of stuff, or do you just smash something together? So that's going to depend on the industry that you're in. If you're in an MSP working for a client, it's going to depend on the client's industry. If it's a bank or an insurance company or legal or health or education, then you're going to be able to sit down and plan it and really do it properly. If it's anything outside of those industries, the MVP is pretty much king or queen. It pretty much rules. So you'll find that most organizations will just go with the MVP model. And the MVP model isn't bad. Like it's not inherently bad, or as you say, they produce something that's very crude. That's not a bad thing, actually, because a business wants to know if its investment is going to yield anything. And so the best way of determining that is by getting it in front of users ASAP. So if they want you to do this AWS Lambda snapshot taking tool, and they want to make it public, and they want the public to be able to come in and plug in their AWS account and set schedules and so on and so forth, it makes sense that you get something out the door within 2 weeks. That's really rough, really nasty, and you get it in front of a small group of closed beta users, and you basically say, "Is this what you're looking for?" Because you're gonna waste a lot of time and a lot of money, and therefore a lot of money, building something over 6 months only for users to tell you, it's sort of 30% of what we wanted, and the rest is sort of, and then you're going to be ripping out and disabling features that customers aren't asking for. So you're going to be going back on yourself, getting rid of not even technical debt, but just just complete and utter rotten code that's not relevant. So the MVP does make sense, but it really does depend on a lot of other factors as to whether you're going to find that. So if you went and jumped ship from your current organization and you jumped into like a bank or an insurance company or legal, you would find that it would be very different because there's lots of regulations in place, a lot of controls in place, a lot of cybersecurity needs to be done. They're not just going to go with an MVP. Like the education system, for example, especially here in Queensland, isn't going to let you build an MVP that takes student data from students who key in their own personal information and just sort of willy-nilly stick it in a database. There's gonna be a lot of control over that data. So in those kind of environments, you're gonna be able to do it properly. But the MVP rules in pretty much any other industry because most businesses want to get immediate feedback from users and then they wanna essentially start pivoting and scaling it and adjusting it to meet that actual demand, live real time demand. So yeah, where do I personally sit? I think you should do an MVP, but again, I'm not. I think you still should do planning, even if you're going to do an MVP. I think you should do some planning around understanding and collecting that data around understanding the problem domain, the problem set, and so on and so forth. But other than that, the MVP will rule. Thanks for the stream. Enjoy the barbecue. I will, Adrian. Thanks very much. Thanks for sticking around. Abhay, thanks for sticking around. Everyone else abandoned me. Fine. Fine. I guess I am probably quite boring, but that's okay. I'll post all of these links to all these articles and everything I've been looking at in the chat in a nice way. Hopefully it'll come through pretty. But in the meantime, that is the end of it. It is good. And if there are no more questions because I'm not answering any. So as requested by my friend Chris, the gong is back in order to denote the end of the stream. I'm going to try and get a bit of background music in the stream as well. Very, very gentle, just in the background, just to fill any of the ums and ahs and dead space. I think that would just make it a bit more comfortable for listeners. All right, I'm off. Thanks very much for your time, ladies and gentlemen, and whatever else you identify as. All are welcome here. I will see you on Wednesday. It's a long weekend here. Monday is a public holiday tomorrow, which is nice, so I'm going to be sleeping in. And then I'll be editing the stream and getting it up. So this will be available 8:30 in the morning US time, US Western time. So it'll be about 11:30 in the morning US East. So if you missed the stream, don't worry, it goes up on the YouTube. Okay, thanks very much, everyone. Goodbye and have fun.